UNESCO Earth Network podcast. Our relationship with nature is threatening the environment we all live in and we all depend upon. We must reconcile with nature. UNESCO Earth Network brings together the voices of leading scientific experts from across the globe, committed to find tailor-made solutions to tackle local environmental challenges in UNESCO-designated sites, such as World Heritage sites, biosphere reserves, and global geoparks.
Welcome to the fifth and final episode of the Earth Network podcast. Today we're travelling to Ghana, where we'll explore the diverse landscape of UNESCO World Heritage sites. Join us as we explore the Asante Traditional Buildings, ATBs, a remarkable collection of 10 unique shrine houses in the Ashanti region of Kumasi. What makes these sites so extraordinary? How do they balance preserving cultural heritage, conserving the environment, and tackling the challenges of climate change? To guide us, we're joined by two incredible experts. Elizabeth Matilda, a Ghanaian heritage management expert and educator, and Dr. Olga Laiza Kupika, a climate and natural resources management specialist from Botswana. Together, they'll share insights on balancing tradition, nature, and resilience. Join us for a captivating finale to this series. Let's start by exploring what it means to be a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a designation reserved for places of outstanding universal value to humanity. The Asante Traditional Buildings are a vivid example, showcasing the cultural identity, craftsmanship, and enduring spiritual traditions of the Asante people. To help us understand these sites, let's hear from expert Elizabeth Matilda, who explains the significance of these sacred structures and what this designation entails.
So first of all, I think when we talk of what a World Heritage Site is basically has to do with the recognition of a site at the international level because of its outstanding universal value, how important that site is to humanity. So it could be a cultural site or a natural site or a mixed So when we talk in terms of the ATBs, basically these ATBs are cultural sites, we could put it that way, because these are this is a kind of a site that speaks to the cultural manifestation of people, like how when you look at the history of the Asante Traditional Buildings, it just shows pure ingenuity from the Ashanti people, how they were building their own traditional houses for over this period of time. Yes, and I would say that it was recognized as a World Heritage because this is like, when you look into that Ashanti traditional settings, these are the only buildings that have survived over the years.
Protecting and preserving sites like the Asante Traditional Buildings requires more than international recognition. It demands active participation from the communities that cherish them. Community-based inventorying is a crucial part of this process, ensuring that local voices guide the identification and safeguarding of their heritage. Elizabeth explains how this approach has empowered communities to take the lead in protecting these cultural treasures.
Community-based inventory is basically, as the word is saying, it's the type of inventory, or it's an inventory that involves community. So community take the decisions. Everything is done by the community, the initiative from the beginning to the end, the selection of the elements, identification of the elements, and the selection of the elements and everything that comes with the inventory process is initiated and done by the community. Basically, that's all that is about. So for instance, for the ATBs that we had, the inventory that was done, this was led purely by the community. So like we have the folklore board. For instance, in Ghana, we had a folklore board leading, and the National Commission on Culture leading the whole field events with the Ghana Museums and Monuments Board. So we went with them as just facilitators. We're just with them and guiding them in the whole inventory process. But the whole work was done by the people, the communities, yes.
Cultural heritage doesn't exist in isolation. The Asante Traditional Buildings are deeply intertwined with their natural surroundings, relying on biodiversity for their construction, maintenance and rituals. The loss of these natural resources poses a significant threat to the buildings and the traditions they represent. Elizabeth explains.
When you look at the ATBs, the whole building is made of natural materials. Okay, so we have the wood, we have the mud itself, we have the roofing, grass and everything. All of these things are made of natural materials. The drums that are even used within the spaces, these are all made from wood, and the herbal medicinal aspects of the whole ATBs, that is involved in the practices that goes on in the ATBs are all, linked to nature. And if we want to maintain these ATBs or want to protect them for future use, then we need to make sure that all of these materials are conserved so that we can sustain the building.
The Asante Traditional Buildings rely on nature, not only for the construction materials, but also for cultural and medicinal practices, making biodiversity protection essential. Olga expands on this link, describing how conservation plays a role in preserving these fragile ecosystems and their traditions.
Biodiversity in particular is a key component of their festivals, foodways, and there are also stories and myths which are told about the plants and the animals, which reflect a relationship of the local communities with the cosmos, the earth, water, and the human world. So each site, if you look at those buildings, we have got trees and plants which are actually are still being used by the local communities for rituals, medicinal knowledge, and practices. So that's why biodiversity is key to their culture.
Of course, no conservation about heritage and biodiversity would be complete without addressing the growing challenges of climate change. Rising temperatures, deforestation, and extreme weather events threaten not only the natural resources needed for preservation, but also the integrity of the structures themselves. Olga highlights the broader impact of climate change on the biodiversity and architecture surrounding these sites.
Climate change is one of the key threats to the Asante Traditional Buildings, especially because it affects either directly or indirectly the biodiversity around. It has affected the biodiversity around the traditional buildings, but it also affects, climate change is expressed in the form of different extreme events. We have droughts, we've got extreme heat conditions where it could be heat waves in some areas. But with this now, it also means as time passes by, with the drought, it affects the phenology of both plant and animal species. Then in terms of the ambience of the buildings, with the excessive heat, you also realize that it also tends to affect the architecture. You actually have the architecture being affected. You also realize that during certain years, floods can also affect the Kumasi area. And that also tends to affect the infrastructure, hence the need for restoration of some of the certain components of the infrastructure which have actually been affected.
Despite the challenges posed by climate change and biodiversity loss, the resilience of the Asante communities offers hope. Their deep connection to these sites and commitment to their preservation shows the strength of their cultural identity. By combining traditional knowledge with innovative solutions, communities can turn climate risks into opportunities for sustainability. Both Olga and Elizabeth share inspiring examples of how these efforts can protect both the heritage and the environment, ensuring that future generations can benefit from these remarkable places.
Resilience can be promoted by making sure that communities take advantage of the opportunities which can be created by climate risks and convert these impacts into opportunities. So when you have impacts on biodiversity, for example, if they are able to profile the risks and their impacts, especially for biodiversity related to their ICH, they can take that as an opportunity to come up with interventions which can ensure restoration of the biodiversity elements. So it's actually key that in trying to respond to the changing climate, communities can actually come up with those initiatives. So we are not only promoting cultural sustainability through active craftsmanship for the youth, but also promoting environmental stewardship among the youth and all members of the community.
Olga emphasizes how climate risks can be turned into opportunities for communities. On the other hand, Elizabeth highlights how the Asante people's spiritual connection to these Asante traditional buildings has helped preserve these sites despite modern pressures. She explains,
we see a lot of community resilience, like even the fact that these sites are there and communities still recognize them and have, strong awareness for the use of these sites to the extent that they are not even demolished. But in the 21st century, that is in itself resilience, It shows the resilience of these communities. And, in the course of the project, we realize how committed these people are and engaged with, there's that awareness of how significant these ATBs are to them. Spiritually, they still recognize that importance that it holds in the society, And so they being able to even keep these sites, well, forget the fact that they have, there's a lot of, withdrawal from the use of the sites. But then the fact that the sites are still recognized within their spiritual significance in itself, it's what I will say it's more resilient than anything else I've seen on the field with this project.
These inspiring stories of resilience showcase the strength of communities and cultural heritage, but also remind us that caring for the environment is deeply connected to preserving these invaluable sites. Throughout this series, we've explored how local knowledge offers meaningful solutions to pressing challenges, such as climate change and biodiversity loss. Thank you for joining us on this journey. It's been an incredible experience delving into UNESCO-designated sites and the efforts of local communities working to protect them. While this marks the end of our podcast series, the mission to safeguard our planet's cultural, natural, and environmental heritage continues. Thank you for listening. Let's keep celebrating and protecting the treasures of our shared world.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. This podcast is part of the UNESCO Earth Network project. This episode was produced by Ilse Campos, sound design and mixer by Emanuel Rudowski. Special thanks to Catherine Lovet and the experts.